Well, hello, folks. Welcome to The Sacred Speaks. My name is John Price. I'm your host, and I'm eager to connect with to present the interview that I shared with today's participant, Molly Carroll. After I did the ritual show, she reached out to me, and I was on her show, the Cracking Open podcast. Check it out at molly-carroll.com. She has a bunch of great interviews on there. She produces some outstanding work, and I'm grateful to know you, Molly. Thanks for being on the show. Now it's my turn. So Molly came on The Sacred Speaks, and we had a great conversation. She has a real gift for the healing arts that she participates in. And I'm grateful to know you, Molly. Thanks a lot. So before we get started, I'll just get some housekeeping, and then we'll get going. As always, check out the Center for the Healing Arts and Sciences. This is a boutique wellness space that my wife and I created many moons ago, and it is an outstanding offering. A lot of community events. If you're ever in Houston, please come and check us out. Check out the website at thecenterforhas.com. Lots of offerings, lots of opportunities. Hope to see you there. The other thing is the Jung Center of Houston. I'm the president of the executive committee of the board, and we're in the process of hiring a new executive director. So check out younghouston.org. You can present your application. And this is an exciting time where we're moving into the next phase. Sean Fitzpatrick, who's been on the show, is the current executive director. He is a dear friend, and we're sad to see him go. However, we're also looking forward to what comes next. So if you know anybody who's looking for a position down here in Houston, pass on the information and apply. Also, the Esalen. I'm back at Esalen. I'll be there twice this year. However, the next event is June 15th to the 19th. Dialed in the previous offering. This is Jung, psychedelics, and the practice of integration. And I want to emphasize integration. So I'm excited to be back. Always a gift to connect at Esalen. Check it out at Esalen, ESALEN.org. And come on out for a workshop. They've got so many offerings. If you don't come to mine, come to one of them. And I think that's it. For now, I'll leave it there. And thanks for being here. I am excited to bring you Molly.
Controls your dream, persuades your thought.
Okay, welcome. My guest today is Molly Carroll, a fast friend, a therapist, writer, and host of Breaking Open, a show that stays close to moments, cracking open, that stays close to moments where the lives we thought we were building quietly stop cooperating. She's also the author of a book on intuition that I'm going to hold up in a second and show you guys. What I appreciate about you, Molly, is your work in intuition is not framed as a gift or a shortcut or a guarantee. It's something far more precarious, something many of us only begin to hear after trust, both internal and external, have been broken. So in this conversation, I want to approach intuition not as a concept to define, but as a lived capacity. I know you're a good guide in this territory, one shaped by rupture, grief, relationship, and of course, risk. I'm interested in intuition not as inner confidence, but as a kind of fidelity, something that may guide us without necessarily protecting us, and it may tell the truth without promising some kind of resolution. So my hope today is that we can open up intuition, not to make it easier or more definable or more clear, but to make it more honest. So Molly, thank you for being here. This has been fun. Of course, you and I had the opportunity to flip the tables, and I was on your show, and now you're here on mine. Thank you for this awesome opportunity. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thank you, John. It's such an honor to be with you. And I know when you were on Cracky Open, I knew instantly we were going to be crossing each other's lives
Yeah,
through.
it
Yeah.
was fun. I mean, that was really that was a first in a number of ways. I mean, to do one of these flip flops where I was on your show, and of course, this theme of cracking open being the kind of what opened you up, and of course, we want to talk about that a little today because you begin. I mean, both of your books that you sent over. You talk a lot about your own personal experiences with a descent. And so I just want to begin here before intuition became something you trusted,
Mm.
something in your life stopped cooperating. And can you take us into that first moment when you realized the life you were living could no longer be lived in the
Mm.
way it was?
The first thing that comes to me is I was in graduate school. I went to Pacifica, Another synchronicity you and I have is around being unions and psychotherapists. And I had to go to Pacifica, they required us to do 90 hours of psychotherapy for our
Yeah.
master's program. And I'd never been in therapy before. I was raised in Omaha, Nebraska, in a
We didn't do
large
that there. What
Irish.
are you talking about?
No. I was telling someone this story the other day of how
Yeah.
I was a therapist and my mom kept introducing me as a teacher because I was an elementary school teacher before. And I'd be like, no, I'm a therapist, mom.
Well, yeah.
That's how much it was, as if you had issues, if you had to, be a therapist or whatever. But yeah, I was in graduate school
Yeah.
and my first therapist called it the white picket fence dwindling moment,
Mhm.
when you have this white picket fence moment of you thinking your life is going to go one way and it goes another way. And I would say I had many moments as being raised, as in Catholicism, even though I would still consider myself kind of a Buddhist and a Catholic together. But I still love to practice the foundation of Catholicism. But being raised Catholic, I'm sure I had some cracking open moments and, leaving my family, leaving the Midwest. But I would say the first one was thinking I was going to marry someone and I did not, and I ended the engagement.
That was it. It was interesting to hear that story. When I was reading that story about, all the boxes that were checked and this seems really exciting and yet you put the brakes on.
Yes, he was Italian, he lived in Paris, he had a Vespa.
Yeah,
You
all the
know,
things.
here's this 5'2" Nebraska. I just thought it was the life. And I started graduate school and I
Mm,
thought, this is not my life. We had a fiance visa to get married because he had to stay in the States. I
wow.
hadn't told my family of origin. I hadn't told my
Mhm.
parents I was going to get married and then we are going to have an official wedding. And I just knew it was not right. And I had to muster up the courage to listen to my deepest truth,
Yeah.
which was to not stay in a relationship with this person, let alone marry him. And so that was kind of the first white picket fence dwindling moment. And I had to really get honest with myself and get rid of my ego and look at my shadow and say,
Mm.
this is not the life I want to live. And I was 29. I had friends who were getting married and already having kids. So it wasn't like in my early 20s, and I had to leave this relationship and to follow my own relationship to myself.
Oh, what a path. What a path. Yeah, so often we wanna do what, others we project onto others, what they desire. That's no easy task, though, of course, if you're talking about getting married and, being engaged, and you're announcing this, on some level,
Hmm.
sharing with people, and then you gotta put the brakes on that train. That brings up some social monitoring and consideration, doesn't it?
Well, not only the social monitoring, but it ends the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like twofold. You're ending what you thought was going to be your life,
Mhm.
and you're also ending someone that you love and that you shared
Yeah.
love with. And we shared a lot of adventures. And
And
so we have these moments in our lives, and I'm sure people listening today can think back and have one when they had to really get honest with themselves. And I think as we get older, that almost gets harder. I
Mhm.
think when we're younger, or I should speak for myself, I had a lot more courage and I had a lot more risk. For some reason, as I've gotten older, I've found myself getting more comfortable
Mhm.
and being a little more scared to take risk in ending, whether that's relationships or my career, changes in my career, or honesty with, friends or my children. So it just, you bringing up that question reminds me of how courageous that was, and how often am
Mhm.
I still living that path at 54 versus 29, you know?
Does it feel like you're not as courageous still?
In certain areas, yes.
What do you think happens there?
I think I'm more comfortable.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I've
You got
been with the
your
same man for 22 years, and hopefully listening, he's like, "Oh god, I hope she's not gonna ask for divorce here." But I'm not. It's not that. But I just had been had a situation with my husband, Adam. We've been together 22 years last week where I had thought something for a long time in our marriage and didn't speak it. because I didn't want to
Mhm.
rock the boat, or I didn't. He's such a great person. He's a kind person. He's an easy person to be married to. So I almost kind of discounted my own self and saying I don't
Mm.
deserve to speak my truth because he is so kind in so many areas. So there's like one example where I think when you're younger and you're not married, I was maybe more brave to speak up, and not discount my own
Mhm.
feelings in that way. Even though people think it's sometimes the opposite, because there are times where I am more brave being 54 and I don't care as much what people think about me. And I'm not as scared to ruffle people's feathers, or I don't, feel like they won't, you know, approve of my decisions. But it's kind of these two parts. So I would say that's like kind of the first thing that came up is just like this level of comfort that I've come into my life. I don't know if I get on a plane and travel to India by myself like I did in my 30s for 6 weeks
Well,
now,
how wonderful that you did that.
as I did in my 30s, or yeah. So it just kind of changes. I don't know how you feel about that, but
That makes sense to me, just developmentally speaking. I certainly think that there's a predisposition toward risk taking and danger when we tend to be younger and, progressive, innovative, wild, disrupt the system. And that as we're older, there's a different agenda and
mhm,
orientation, and we've got a
mhm,
different root system in place.
mhm,
Yeah, that,
mhm,
that makes sense. So I want to go into your, of course, cracking open as this, you know, like that there's a lot for those of us that have podcasts, there's always this we tend to teach or be curious about what we most need to learn, how has give folks that are listening and an invitation into your world, like as a psychotherapist, as a podcast host, what are the questions that you're interested in asking? What's this process been like? And we'll kind of set the stage up for when we dive into intuition in a little bit, but I'm interested in sticking with this cracking open as a theme
mhm.
and what stirs inside of you and what you've discovered from the people you've been interviewing through the process.
Mm. I think I was very fortunate with my childhood. I had two parents that loved us. I had two parents that provided for us. I had two parents that stayed married and believed in faith, love, and laughter. But I also had two parents who were raised in a system of, don't ask too many questions, see but don't tell.
Mhm.
Um, that's just the way it goes. You should be grateful for what you have. But there was always a voice inside of me that had more questions, that wanted a deeper connection, that wanted to have deeper conversations. And I went to Catholic schools my whole life. And we had my elementary school didn't have a playground. We had a parking lot. That's where we went out for recess. And there was a corner called the crying corner, which is like two rails and, maybe a patch of grass, and I was always at the crying corner, not crying, helping the criers.
Oh, there you go. A little premonition.
I'm not a great crier, to be honest. I'm trying to become a better crier because it's such a great release, but I was always at the crying corner. What's going on? How can I help you? And I think that was kind of my beginning of my cracking open path is I loved, yes, okay, let's be honest. My ego loved that I was a helper and I was wanted to
Mhm.
help people, but it was more about that was the real shit. Can I say shit on
Mhm.
this
Of
kind of?
course.
Okay, that was the real stuff, right? That was where the
But you didn't say
depth
shit.
was.
Sorry. I know.
And that just led into my path of traveling around the world and meeting different
Yeah.
cultures. I learned to speak Spanish. I, became a teacher and then a therapist and a writer. And then I worked with companies, bringing in these deeper conversations where I'd walk in the boardroom and the arms would be crossed when I'd start talking about meditation or intuition or guides. But I just brought my whole self to, wanting to then my coaching group for women, my retreats for women, and just wanting to break it down. And, I just got bored with the
Mhm.
cocktail conversation, the country club atmosphere, the where'd you get that shirt? I just was bored and I ended up asking people, deeper questions. And then that led to cracking open and following my intuition on who is my guest. Like I saw you on Rich
Mhm.
roll
Mhm.
and then I reach out to you. I just would follow my intuition. But it's just been kind of the path where if I'm walking in a room or I'm sitting with my family. I'd much rather talk about what really happened in your day or how that make you feel, or be alone
Yeah.
with my own process in my own way. And I know, I mean, I know that's not always how it works. And, sometimes we need to talk about the weather, but I tend to shy away from those conversations and into the Leonard Cohen is where I got cracking open. It's in the cracks where the
Sure.
light comes through.
I quote
And
that in my forthcoming book. It's such a good,
oh,
yeah, I love that.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, that reference to Leonard Cohen. That's a good thread. It's funny just thinking through like we do tend to respond to people who've been cracked open. Like that just noticing the tendency of the podcast process, when I interview folks, or certainly you've built this podcast around it. It's like we want to know the meaning that somebody's making of their lives. And
Mhm.
what have you learned about it? Given that that's your central question,
Mm.
what have you learned about the nature of getting cracked open and why we're so curious about it?
I think the biggest thing, I'm just like have a litany of guests that are coming into my head, and like the world stops when we come on Zoom, and all the guides and everyone comes in, and we have this like spiritual experience every single time, whether it's a scientist or a psychologist, an athlete or a parent who lost a child. I think it's all the moment you have those really honest conversations, you feel less alone. You feel more
Mhm.
human. There's a grounding of why we are put on this planet, because there's so many other reasons to question why. There's so many reasons of why God would you take this child from these people? Why would the climate be where it's at? We're at a really interesting time in history, both politically, environmentally, spiritually. And so I think when I'm talking to people, I interviewed Tammy Simon. She started Sounds True.
Yeah, great.
And she comes through a lot because listen to her podcast a lot, and obviously read a lot of books on Sounds True and
Hmm.
taken their courses. And whenever I was doing research on her, she seems very professional, very grounded, and clear and calm. And in our interview, when we talked about her cracking open moment, she ended up talking about her relationship with her partner and the ritual, how to have ritual in your relationship. And I'd never heard that before, but it came from the cracking open moment, right? Because if I
Hmm.
would have talked to her about the business, how do you start Sounds True, and how do you run the business, and in these times of economic the stable part of business right now, especially in the self transformation space. But I didn't, right? We started with the heart, we
Hmm.
started with the soul. And so I think having that be, Terry Real, who I know you admire
Hmm.
too, or I know you, I think you were going to interview him. He had just come out of a little bit of a health situation. So he was so cracked open when we talked. And he was so real and so heart centered and humble and kind in his interview, but because it's from that space. So I think starting from that space is allows people to really be more human, connect on such a deeper level that kind of washes away, the resumes, the awards, the accolades.
And it reminds me of something. I think it's Duncan Trussell in the Annie Lamott said it that when we meet somebody, we meet their bodyguard.
Mhm.
And this is of course coming to mind right now because I'm thinking about like I don't want to go the way of the cynic here, but there is an
Mhm.
element of
Mhm.
talk about social monitoring. The ways that we kind of show up in the world, and you go directly at what's underneath that. I think about being on your show, and I was like, okay, you're asking me questions about my own personal experience, and I've been able to be on the questioning side of the microphone, not the questioned side of the microphone for a long time, and
Uh-huh.
how you and I kind of we just went there, and it's a different beast when you start to really talk not about things or ideas, but about your own personal experience, and in a public forum, you got to take the mask off.
Well, and I think people like to intellectualize things. They
Hmm.
want to it gives it context. I know it's hard. We all do, right? It gives it context, and it gives us safety, and it gives us
Yeah.
foundation to kind of let the listener or the friend or the partner
Hmm.
know that we're important.
Yeah.
and especially our like little person inside of us, we matter.
Matter, I
There's so
matter,
much
yeah.
in mattering and
Yeah.
meaning and being seen. So it makes sense, right? To kind of start with that. This is who I am. This is what I know. Please see me.
Mm. Well, you've done a lot of work on your I mean, you like you I say this lovingly, like you gave me a body check, around some of the ways that I was and I really appreciate it, because that I respond really favorably to that about, I think one of the things I was doing is giving a bunch of disclaimers around masculine and the feminine. You were like, "Stop, stop it." And it was so appreciated, just to just come out and kind of own the truth and not kind of worry about what comments on YouTube are going to come up. And so I think you have that in your nature, to really go at least I experience you that way, to go at whatever behind the mask. And
Mm.
so I think your voice is appreciated and I've experienced it because you kind of you want to get in there and move past the typical presentation. And people know coming onto your show, they're going to talk about how they cracked open. And so that's, that's not, intellectual conversation. It's kind of scary.
Well, I did hear this though. I think one of the keys to a good conversation is a little bit of the grandma on the rocking chair on the porch, a little bit of neuropsychology, and then personal story. So I
Yeah.
think there's a place for it, right? I
Nice.
think there's a place for it because I think people want to walk away, with a tip or tool or something
Hmm.
they can use when they're on the ground, when they've hit rock bottom in their own way, when they, got in a fight with someone or they don't know how to deal with something they're going through with their kids. And
Hmm.
when they ate too much, drank too much, shopped too much, had too much sex, feel shame. And what do I do? What do I grasp for? And so there is a place for intellectualizing and having some foundation. We were just talking about this today in my Al Anon meeting around
Hmm.
the readings and the structure and the context that a 12 step get provides for people who show up there that is safe, that builds safety. It's just when it becomes all encompassed. It's, Rumi says the head is, or a Sufi poet, I think it was Rumi who said it, the head is the servant to the heart,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? There's a place for it, but can it be more of a servant than the bodyguard, or, the
Yeah.
main person, the main center stage?
Well, what have you learned? Because you're so oriented to asking these questions, right? You're a therapist, you see behind the curtain. What have you learned about the stories that we present and the stories that are kind of truer and we keep closer to the vest? What have you learned about the way that people show up? And I'm throwing you a lob ball because I'm trying to get at like what is this thing that we do? Because if we all do it,
Hmm. Hmm.
what have you learned about the ways that we do it and how we do it and
Hmm.
why we do it?
I think there's two parts to this. The first part is kind of piggyback off of like Joe Dispenza's work and some other people, actually my work and my own reading and studying is that there comes a part where in our life our story becomes too much of who we are and it turns into being a victim. So what I've learned is not only sitting with thousands of patients, but listening to, hundreds of stories and interviewing and researching, reading books is you can feel it in your body when the story has become too much of their identity. I was abused as a kid. My mom didn't pay attention to me. We grew up without money. I had lost a friend, a parent, a sibling at a young age. The color of my skin, because I'm a woman, all these things that we can attach to, and we make it our excuse to not change. We make it our excuse to stay in our own bad habits. We make it our excuse to get away with things that don't serve us anymore. And it's it's
Oof.
it's a disservice. It's an absolute disservice. And I own my own victimhood. I was in it for a while after my parents died. I lost both my parents fairly young, and I was pissed and angry and pissed off at everyone else who had grandparents' day and were going to their parents' house for Sunday dinner. And I was like, "Fuck you,"
Hmm.
I saw myself. I could feel it in my body, and it was a difference between anger and needing to work through my grief and becoming a victim and identifying with it to make it something that I could, almost be mad at people about versus take responsibility for. And that might be controversial that I say that, but That's one thing I've learned in listening to people's stories. I have another side too, but I wonder if you.
Yeah, remember the
Yeah,
second because I want to dive in here.
I
Like
will.
we gotta somehow remember that we're going down
Mhm,
another avenue. So let's put on our psychotherapist hat for a second because
mhm.
like this is number one. I think it's controversial for a really good reason, and I want to talk about it because it is controversial. So blame. I want to go into blame and how there is a real critique of modern psychotherapy and modern healing. That what it does is it kind of facilitates and perpetuates this um, convenience of blame. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of people making a lot of money listening to people just rehearse their blame essentially and saying,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, let's have compassion for you." And that certainly does set us up to be loved on a little bit. Okay, that's maybe part of the dance, but when does it become I want to get into where it becomes problematic. You're hitting on something really important here. So let's just
Mhm.
open this up a little bit and talk about,
Mhm.
folks you've worked with, things you've seen, ways that we end up allowing the victim archetype to manifest and drive our lives.
I'll never forget one of my clients, and, we have to be so close about confidentiality, but this was years ago. The moment she walked in the door, there was heaviness.
Wow.
The moment she sat down on the couch, I could already feel her pissed off.
Mm,
And it's okay to be angry and mad. I believe in anger. I grew up Irish. I mean, with anger has a place. I mean, I would, and I'm fire. I'm Aries. I'm Pitta in Ayurvedic medicine. I am fire. So I love it. I love anger. I think I use it for a vehicle for good. But
uh,
what I would say is her relationships felt it. Her children felt it. Her colleagues felt it. So I always try to come through the lens as a therapist and a practitioner of, I always say, I'm going to get Nebraska on you, or I'm going to put my hand on your back softly, but push you. So I love you. I'm so sorry that happened to you. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't fair. You did nothing wrong. We really have that sort of language. And then from here, how do you make the change? Because your mom isn't still here hitting you with the belt.
right.
Your dad's still not here smoking crack. I mean, not to get, you've heard this there. It's not happening in this room, and yet I feel it like it is. So if I feel it, everyone else has got to feel it. And I try to bring humor into it too, you know, of like, bummer. Would you want to be around you like this? I don't
Oh,
wouldn't want to be around me like this. And I try to bring humor into it, humility, my own story. I'm not one of those therapists. I definitely have a great lens of like the filtering of what's serving the client, and it's not about serving myself. But I
hmm
also think that in order to have a deep relationship with your clients, you've got to share yourself in
hmm
the room, knowing that you're there too. So that's one thing I would say is just not letting my clients or my kids or my husband, not thinking I can fix them. It's not my job, but also allowing a space of deep questioning around, is this serving you anymore? I hear you. Tell me more. Like, how is this making you successful? How is this making you feel alive? What is the energy around this?
Yeah, I'm with you. I see it and experience it a great deal with the folks that I'm connected with. And, it's like my precious, like these stories that keep us from responsibility, and I think that like ownership of how I do the hit by a bus scenario. I'm like every single person in your life just dies, is gone tomorrow. Does this feeling that you're feeling go away? They're like, nope.
Mm,
I'm like, yep. It's not about like, you're not going to get your mother to forgive you or you to forgive your mother. This is not it. There's something else that's carrying this on. But I think there's an issue with our profession that there are a lot of folks that kind of perpetuate the victim dance, and then we create this real I mean, I'm not totally into all this, but I've been seeing it around in the social media spaces and just issues with trauma culture and the confusion when it goes from acknowledgement and awareness and ownership and sharing of your story into identification with that
mhm.
kind of earlier incarnation of yourself that limits how you show up in the world.
Well, to like kind of piggyback on intuition, like where I know we're going to talk about intuition, but one of the things that I've seen is and I'm going to out it because I'm going to be brave today, is that I can see where the trauma is in the body.
Huh.
So that's one of the things I can do.
What
I
a
can see if it's
gift.
in the gut or the heart, on the throat. Is it a noose? Is it a shield? Is
Mhm.
it shackles? Is it I can literally see it. And I don't speak it. I ask them questions around it, but I'll say,
Mm.
wow, what's the image? Because it's still in the body, but honestly, I'll maybe only spend 2 to 3 or 4 sessions on the body, in the body,
Mhm.
and then we need to move on to the next thing. And
Mhm.
that's where I think it's just takes time, and I'm saying people can do this for themselves. Listen, the people listening today can, if they just spend a little bit of time stopping, getting quiet, closing their eyes, taking deep breaths, and thinking about what happened to them. And I'm not saying for a long time, but they got mad at the person who in the grocery store line, and that's not a real thing. Get in your car. I have this thing called PAC. It's an acronym: presence, awareness, and compassion. Get present of what just happened, aware of where it is in the body. It's shackles, it's a sword coming from my heart. It's, my dad made me wait at school my whole life, or, and I never got picked up on time and I had to wait in the grocery store
Mhm.
line, and, the rationality of it, and then bring compassion to it. Like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Bring it a cup of
Mhm.
tea. Bring it lots of love, and notice if it gets smaller in the body. Notice if you're less anxious standing in line at the grocery store. Notice, and then I say, and then now you need to practice it. Go to the longest line at the grocery store. The next time you're at the grocery store, go wait in the longest line and do pack,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, it's funny, sorry, go on, 'cause I had a
No, that's it.
fantasy.
So basically, it's like I also believe in action. I also
Yeah,
believe in practicing it, strengthening that muscle,
yeah,
and not, doing pack, but then also like putting yourself in the longest grocery store line, forcing yourself to kind of change these neural pathways that have been built in pretty deep around I deserve to not ever have to wait again.
yeah. Because we can't think ourselves into change. Yeah, I love this. This is a great example, like, intentionally expose yourself to this. But my fantasy as you were speaking was how justified people often feel in their blame. So I had a scenario that played out, which is somebody driving down the street and getting cut off in traffic,
Mm,
and how often, I mean, I'll tell people that I work with, like, "Hey, if you come in and talk to me about the road rage you just experienced, that's good work. Like,
mhm,
everything's fair game, bring it all in here." But
mhm,
there is something you're cued into here about emotional body-based sensations, and then the projection that we do onto others and let them carry it for us.
mhm,
So if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I could have a slew of things: fear, anxiety, rage, all the memories of the ways I felt cut off in my life, which is symbolically playing out. Now I'm going to like harass this person who probably was not thinking and they just didn't signal. So there's this you're talking about blame and victimhood in a pretty powerful way, I think. And I'm just curious about, speaking of action, what's the process to get somebody to be conscious of
mm,
this? Because in my experience, people are pretty burrowed into their belief systems.
mm. I think the foundation of any deep healing starts with compassion.
Hmm.
It starts with being compassionate to their pain, being compassionate to the part of them that wants to be a victim, that doesn't feel like people see them and see their pain
Mm,
and their grief. Like, see them and say, I'll see you every week. I'll see that I will see for you. And from that place, kind of the barriers go down. And then you can do some deeper inquiry around, is this serving you anymore? Like, what do
mhm,
I love the question, what are you really needing in this moment? Are you needing a hug? Are you needing to share your story again, but in a different way? Are you needing me to just sit with you in silence? What are you needing? And then not only, as a practitioner, I try to do that for myself instead of looking to others to feel my needs. Molly, what do you need at this moment to feel less of a victim? And maybe I'm bringing up this topic. Maybe this came so on so strong because my dad passed away 14 years ago of a stroke, and my mom died about 6 years ago of pancreatic cancer. And, it's been, 14 years with my dad and 6 years with my mom. So you kind of go in and out of the grief and in and out of missing them and whatever. And for some weird reason today, I missed them. both of them. I
Uh-huh,
wanted a
uh-huh.
parent. I wanted a parent to call. I wanted a parent to take care of me. I wanted to be a child, and I'll never be a child again. Right. And so I had to ask myself instead of, I would think, and I don't always do this well. So people listening, don't think that I am perfect. I am so flawed. I have so many areas of my life that I'm working on. Hence, probably why I'm in this profession.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing.
the wounded healer.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
right? But I knew it was there. And so instead of like looking at that to my kids or my husband or a friend or a client, even, right? I had sessions this morning. I was driving to my workout class and said, Molly, what do you need? And all I heard was Mother Mary. So I said, the rosary,
Mm,
Mother Mary, she's your mother too. Be with
mhm,
Mary,
mhm.
right? So I said the rosary. And by the time I got to my workout class, I felt better.
There's
Didn't
that
mean I
Catholic
miss him
the
less,
Catholic part of you.
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Rosaries, Buddhist and Catholic, that works. Did you
Malas and rosaries.
and you missed like, that is it, right? Like, missing your parents as opposed to needing the longing to be cured or fixed by their presence. Like,
Mhm,
I don't know, there's something kind of beautiful about missing someone, longing,
mhm,
you know? Yeah, we try to resolve our feelings pretty quickly.
mhm.
Mm. So, 2 things. We have a second thing to connect with. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah,
Okay, go there, and then I have another thing I wanna go into.
yeah, what I've learned from listening to so many people's stories is the one is when I could feel when they're too much in becoming their stories or becoming their identity,
Mhm,
and the second one is that we are not alone.
mhm,
We are not alone. We are so deeply connected. We are so deeply connected to something on an unconscious level.
mhm,
And when listening to someone else's story, there hasn't been a time in my life, whether it's a friend or my kids or my husband or a client or someone on the podcast or a stranger at the grocery store. It doesn't matter. Gosh, I'm bringing up the grocery store a lot today.
it's a good spot. I get it.
Do you spend a lot of time there, Molly?
Yeah, yeah.
It's my social outlet. Um, to go to the grocery store these days is that something in their story resonates with me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was at a coffee shop the other day working, and as I was leaving, a man I know said, "Oh Molly, something. Oh hi. I live in a small town. I live in Bend, Oregon." And then as I was putting my coffee cup in the bin, a man came up to me. He was obviously houseless and didn't have many teeth. And he came up to me, and honestly, my first thought was like, "Oh, buddy, what's going to happen?" Which I'm not proud of, but it was the truth. And he ended up telling me the funniest jokes. I wish I could remember one of them right now. And he like would tell me one, and then one was like about South America. And when do you find it South America, like burr or something? And he's like, it's these dorky jokes that make us laugh. He made my day. He
Oh.
made my day.
Mhm,
Right? And I'm constantly knowing we're connected. I'm constantly surprised and humbled by others people's stories. I learn all the time from my clients on how to be a better human being, on how to handle
mhm.
grief and loss and love. I'm a student. I'm a student to people's stories.
I can tell.
Yeah, I'm honored. I feel like every time, and I may not listen, not every time, if I'm really being honest, I try to
Mhm.
remember that it's an honor that someone is actually sharing their deepest stories with me. Like, what an honor, right?
Mhm,
So I know I did come in a little hard with the victim stuff because I don't want people to be there because I know for myself too, it serves no purpose and
mhm.
life is so precious. And then at the same time, stories are such the foundation for connection, human connection.
I heard this a long time ago when it comes to trauma survivor groups, whether it's sexual assault or some terminal illness. People go into these groups. There's a notable shift from victim to survivor, and that's a massive shift in
Mhm,
orientation.
mhm,
That I'm Yeah, I even think about like what Mary Casamano, Bill Richards are doing at Johns Hopkins, or we're doing in the psilocybin studies. When people come in with terminal illnesses, and all of a sudden these dynamics where they've been victimized and they've been harmed and they've guarded and protected just evaporate, and they're able
Mhm,
to that they're going to die soon. However, they have a lot more agency in their death than this thing that, because we have no training in our culture for death, we just imagine that we're passive recipients of this horrible outcome that,
mhm.
with sadness, of course, is going to visit every one of us. But ultimately, that's our great victimhood. And I think our unconscious of our culture is that we don't recognize that it's coming.
Mhm. Have you read the Tibetan Book of Death and Dying?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Yeah. It's a favorite. I mean, like that book offers such clarity around death that my Western mind just gobbled it all the way up. When did you
Mm.
stumble into it?
Graduate school, maybe a little bit before
You
someone
read
gave it to me.
you read it in grad school?
Yeah, yeah. We read it in graduate school. Someone gave me a copy
Ugh.
in grad school right before, during. Yeah.
What about that book comes up then?
I just think two things come up for me. One is how different cultures accept death, and our Western culture is so resistant and afraid, and
Mhm.
in denial of death. And other cultures kind of prepare themselves from birth
Yeah.
that we're impermanent. And the second one is around the power of ritual
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
the death process.
Mhm.
And
None.
so reminding myself, I've been with people when they've died, of how even if they, how do we, or friends of mine that are dying and I'm not with them when they die, but spend time with them before they pass, how can I be a presence of acceptance, ritual, love, and support? It's just they take such a different approach to the dying process and impermanence,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that we're not taking anything with us. We're all going to die.
That's a little bit like this victim narrative that we're working over. I think about how many overwhelmingly disorienting experiences happen to human beings up until about 70, 80 years ago.
Mm,
Like how many people experience death in war, disease, child death, like just how universal the great suffering was. And
mhm,
then we have a parent that didn't attune to us in the way that we needed. And we carry that same capacity to, get pissed off at cholera. And because like our parent did, 17 things, but the 18th was this horrible
mhm.
thing that we carry. And then our life becomes so occupied with that victimization role that we just project it out to the world. So I think ultimately maybe it does all lead to death on some level, death and sex and those things. So earlier you said tears, they don't come as easily. What's that?
Wow, that's a good question. I've never been asked that, actually, in all my interviews. I don't know. I think it's part of my makeup
Mhm.
of that they just don't come easily.
Mhm.
And then that's a cop out answer too, because I do think um, I have found myself stopping crying
Um,
during times when the tears come because it's not appropriate, or
yeah.
I don't have time to fall apart. Will I make someone feel uncomfortable? Will this be, accepted and received?
Yeah.
Um, but I have to say that is shifting in the way that I'm starting to recognize when I do cry, I feel so much better. And tears are made of
Mhm.
salt, and salt dissolves things. So I
Mhm.
know once I cry, that salt dissolves my wound, my pain, my grief, my fears, my sadness. And so I actually sometimes force myself to cry. Like when I know I need to cry, I have like a playlist
This is
A
very healthy,
Spotify
Molly. I
playlist.
love this.
I
Yes.
really do. So those of you, I mean, I recommend this to my clients, like find those 4 or 5 songs that just kill you or movies. I one day knew I needed to cry and I got in bed at like 2 PM and watched Terms of Endearment. I know
Oh,
torture,
shit.
right? Terms of freaking endearment. And
Steel
I cried.
Magnolias, Terms of Endearment. Let's
Oh,
line them all up, you know?
Way We Were is my favorite
Oh,
movie.
shit.
Hubble. And so, right. And I just let myself sob for 2.5 hours. 2.5
Yeah.
hours.
Wow.
And
Good
then
for
it was
you.
hard to get out of bed at 4:30 in the afternoon, right? But I knew my kids were getting home from school or I needed to do something for the rest of my day or, and I didn't want to become, like even more depressed staying in bed. But
Yeah.
so I knew when it's time to get up, right? It's that inner compass of saying, okay, now it's time to move on. But I did let myself cry because I knew I needed it. So I'm learning about myself in tears. I'm
Mhm.
learning the value of them and how therapeutic and healing they can be. And at the same time, I'm also honoring who I am. I always
Mhm.
say there's fountains, water faucets, and dried up wells, right? There's those
Mm.
people who just cry easily, they're fountains. There's the water faucets, they can, when they need to cry, they can push the button and the tears come. And then there's those just dried up wells, they got to find it some way.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in between the dried up well and the water faucet. I'm somewhere in between those two places.
Well, so beautiful that you've created a meaning endeavor around. I mean, most people that I talk to who have trouble accessing tears aren't sitting in bed watching tear jerkers, like that, because it's almost, like we forget the wisdom of the body. It doesn't have to be codified by the intellect, it just has to be expressed by the body. And why cry? Because we cry.
Mm.
Like that's a function in the body that probably deserves to be kickstarted a little bit. And then all of a sudden you're no longer in control. Now you're just a fountain.
I'll share a personal story. Another one. I was telling John before we started, I was very lucky. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and I know this time is precious and I actually love being a parent. And I'm not one of those people that's handling my kids going away well. I'm horrible at it. I don't want them to go to college. I don't want them to leave the house. I'd much rather have them stay in the basement. Or be like Europe where they never leave. I know it's not good, right? And I teach classes. I'm teaching with a college counselor, like how to help your kids go to college. And I'm the first one to say, like, I'm horrible at it. So if you're
Yeah.
bad too, don't feel bad about it. So I know these times are precious. And so I'm creating environments and putting my resources behind creating times to be with my kids. So we spent our holidays in Europe in London and and I'm really close to my son and I've always been really close to my son. I named him after my father and, you know,
Mhm.
I had 42 hours of labor. He was 2.5 hours, two and a half
Woo!
weeks late. He came out 10 pounds. I'm
Oh
5'2".
my.
He's 6'3" now, but
Yeah.
we've always been connected in this interesting way. But we had some conflict, right? He's a man. He's in a new relationship he doesn't want me to always be helping him and solving things. And so, because of Al Anon, because the foundation of Al Anon teaching me that you got to speak truth to heal, you got to speak truth to get out of your addiction of codependency. We were walking down the streets in London. There was one of these conflictual moments. And I said, hey, all four of us, we're going to a coffee shop and we're talking about this dynamic.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
what is going on? And we all went to this coffee shop and named the dynamic, what's going on for each person in the family when these sort of things happen. And I did cry and I
Mm.
cried. And I just said, I'm learning, you guys. I'm learning to let go.
Mm.
It's not easy for me. It's not
Oh.
easy to let me let you go. But when I started crying, and it wasn't sobbing, it was, the tears rolling down, both my kids, not my husband. he's he's I won't go into that of how often I've seen him cry. Both my kids kind of got teary-eyed.
Mm.
And I think when we cry, we give permission to others to feel and to access a deeper essence of emotion that we cover up. And that's one of the gifts of tears is
Mhm.
you're doing it in service to others.
Mm. Thank you for that. After saying you don't cry, you sure have several stories about crying and trying to goad yourself into tears.
I'm just
Yeah.
telling you my two.
That's okay, that's it. That's where we're at
That's
our
it. That's
limit
all I
now,
got for
yeah.
you.
Uh, so just I'm curious, you've mentioned Al-Anon a couple of times, and for anybody that doesn't know what that is, would you give a bit of a
Mm.
orientation to that?
Yeah, Al-Anon is part of the 12-step program as AA and, sex addiction or Overeaters Anonymous. Al-Anon is for people who have a family member or someone in their life who is struggling with addiction. So I have a brother that is struggled with addiction, and my father was a highly functioning alcoholic. And then I'm Irish, so
Mhm.
I think I can't tell you how many aunts,
Long
uncles, cousins.
lineage of
The
yeah,
lineage.
yeah.
And so, but I really went into Al Anon not because of that. I went into Al Anon around my codependency. When my daughter was 16, I could feel there was a part of me that was codependent, and in that meaning was affected by her emotions, was
Mhm.
affected by her approval, was affected. And I'm a really strong personality, and I feel like I can travel the world by myself, and I've started businesses, and I don't have this with anyone else but my kids and a little bit of my family of origin, but I'm working on that.
Mhm.
So it got me back in the rooms. And so it's a place that is anonymous, and it's a place to look at where you are codependent on other people's emotions, or your actions are affected by other people's decisions, not for the better, that are harming you.
Yeah.
And you want to break free of that cycle. And it gives a context and 12 steps and a foundation of truth and fellow followers and fellow people to know that you're not alone in this walk, and to show up time and time again in your truth.
Yeah, I love this James Hillman line where he says, "We used to call codependency love." And like, yeah, our culture is becoming more and more aware of the ways that we're corrupting the container of
Mhm.
relationships and losing ourselves in the process. How do you define codependency?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that.
I know,
I
shit.
know. I don't want to actually get out the DSM. I mean, the best example I have of codependency is when your emotions are affected by somebody else's, or your decisions are affected by somebody else's.
Yeah,
So my son loses a soccer game, and you would have thought that I just lost losing an Academy Award.
yeah.
And it's not rational, and it's not proportional.
Hmm.
My daughter asked me to leave her bedroom, and you would have thought that I just got broken up with.
Right. Yeah, like, yeah. Get it. I think one of the best ways I've heard it is like when you get life from other people. Like your life is generated by other people's livelihood or life and emotional life,
Mhm.
and there's no differentiation.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the
Mhm.
mission, right? Is to become differentiated, where somebody can be angry with you, and that's their experience.
And exactly, and when people are going through the individuation process, you know that it's a gift and not
Hmm.
as if they're leaving you,
Yeah, yeah.
or right? They're finding themselves. They have their own being, and they need to have their own life. One of the sayings is "Let go, let God." In Al-Anon, we have a lot of slogans. It's like,
Good.
let source come in and use that as one of your deepest relationships, not the other people around you.
Okay, so I want to dive a little bit into intuition, and this is part of the process. The question that I want to set up is essentially back to the Serenity Prayer. You know,
Mm,
um, God grant me the capacity to differentiate between intuition and codependency.
mhm.
Like, so let's talk a little bit about intuition, what that means to you, and yeah, defining it, set it up. What do you think people most often need to know? What do we get wrong about intuition? All these questions.
Oh my gosh, I had such a good teaching in this while I was writing the book and doing research around trust within, and then, working with other people where they pushed my buttons on what is intuition, or pushed me to define it, right? Because I think it's such an individual experience. But basically, it's around an inner knowing, a gut feeling
Mhm.
of a decision that you need to make, or a choice or direction with morals and ethics and values.
Mm,
So you
mhm.
use your morals and ethics and values. You don't just say, "Oh, this is my intuition. I can go rob a bank," or "This is my gut feeling to gossip about this person or to vent." That's not intuition. And your intuition is something that, lives in the body. Some people feel it in the gut, some people feel it in the heart. We believe the third eye. or the sixth chakra, which is in between your eyebrows. It's a magenta color. You can go whatever direction you want. Antonio Damasio out of the University of Iowa did an amazing experiment. You can look it up on intuition or on a card game. Telepathy tapes now, with the
Yeah.
telepathy tapes coming out
Yeah.
and all the different, it's becoming more, psychics, intuitives, guides. People are much more open to it. But what I would say to anyone listening right now is just cultivate your own relationship to your intuition, that it is such an incredible resource for you. And if you're not using it in some capacity, you're missing out on an area of your life that brings depth and clarity and grounding and calmness and peace. It's a relationship. I have a relationship with my intuition. I feel it. I can feel it kind of like an entity as a being outside of me.
Oh, yeah, well, you've obviously got a pretty honed like, so I got a story, like, I was sharing with you that I went surfing with my son in California last week, and I've got a shark awareness, and so how do you learn? Because I think about all the people that I work with and myself included, the anxiety that I have, so fear and intuition oftentimes, are indistinguishable. And so
Hmm.
how do I determine if I'm having an intuitive sense that there's a shark versus I'm having a very understandable fear and projecting that onto reality?
Let me ask you this question. How did you feel when you were in the water about the seals, hearing that there were seals? Like, what did your body
Yeah.
feel like?
So full story, like, so I was in the airport and this fella that I ran into, it's a guy I see in the airport often actually. He's taking his family to Mexico because they're going to go surfing. And I said, wow, I'm actually going to go surf with my son in LA. I haven't surfed out in California. I grew up surfing in Texas. And I said, and I've got this rational slash irrational fear of sharks. And he laughed and he goes, yeah, the only time I get really nervous is when the seals are present. And I was like, oh yeah, man, absolutely. And then we went on our merry way. Well, cut to about 4 days later where I'm out in the water with my son and my little legs dangling in, and my son paddled my son paddles over to me. He's like, "Oh, we're joined by the seals." And I was like, "Oh, shit." And so I I actually I didn't feel intuitively that there was a shark present. I felt aware that it was my fear, and I actually
Uh-huh.
didn't wanna get out of the water, and I stayed in there, and that was fine. But I do think about how many times, like, we have some intuition and we don't listen to it, or we have anxiety and we just project that everywhere, and then somebody who thinks here's another good one. Somebody who, is a quote "empath,"
Hmm.
and yet they're just projecting all their shit out onto the world. So
Hmm.
that's the thing about distinguishing how, like, because people now have an identity around, oh, I just sense everybody's fear. I'm like, no, you have anxiety.
Hmm.
You're scanning the world all the time, and that's that codependent thing, I guess. Okay, lobbed ball.
I'm gonna actually give your listeners an exercise is take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of the paper, right? So you have two columns. And on the left side, put intuition, gut feeling, heart centered. And then on the right side, put fear, anxiety on the right side, right? So you take a story and you think about something or decision you need to make and you notice how does your body feel? And if your body feels tense, and your stomach's churning and your heart's racing, your palms are sweating, you're into that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, you have a headache, you think it may hurt someone else, by your decisions, that's not usually your intuition.
Mm,
Now,
hmm.
let's say that you're thinking about another decision and you feel, a little nervous but excited. It feels a little risky, but you know you need courage to get over that. You kind of see, even though you may be a little nervous, you see yourself in a different space after you make this decision. You see your business growing. You see a relationship deepening. You see a piece of art being created. You see a book you always wanted to write, but you were scared. That could be of service to others. That is intuition. So the number one compass for your intuition is your body. You share what you're trying to do with other people and notice how you feel when you're sharing it.
Mm,
But when you're sharing it with someone else, make sure you do not change your decisions from their reaction. Because usually when we're
Yeah.
doing something courageous or risky or deeply following our intuition, other people's projections are going to rise. Like when I went to India by myself and left my kids, I had someone say to me, "You're being a bad mother." My kids were 3 and 5. And they literally said, "I
Ouch.
think you're being a bad mom by leaving your kids for 6 weeks and going to India and Pakistan." And I had to breathe and, so but that was definitely my intuition that guided me through that process and that
Mhm.
story. So, if the body's your compass, but yet there's also a left brain exercise that you could do that will check your morals, your ethics, your values to make sure you're making a right decision, not just for yourself, but, you know, for others around you as well. I hope that's helpful.
It is, and what I immediately go to is that I've personally I I love anybody who watches this show or listens to this show knows how much I love Jeffrey Kripal. I love his idea that we don't have Charles Xavier's school for mutants, and that we're all mutants essentially like X-Men, and we all have special powers, and maybe
Mm,
one person's is telepathy and the other person's is intuition, the other person's relationship, the other person has foresight, we just don't grow up in a culture that really sensitizes us to these images and visions and body-based awarenesses. And so what
mm,
what I hear in what you're saying is certainly for me, I have not gone through training on some level to reflect on the various centers of my body, mind, heart, spirit that communicate with me. That I've not
mm.
had the opportunity to go into the school for mutants and learn how to use my powers. And so then we just do our thing and, we trial by fire, I guess. But what I like about this exercise is if you'll actually do it for, X amount of time, you will probably notice things change. And that's really interesting.
Well, my intuition just heard something huge about you
Please, I'm
and
ready to
what your mutant gift is.
what do you think it is?
It is absolutely being with men. It is
Oh, yeah,
absolutely
that's sweet.
creating space for men and boys to be themselves,
Mhm,
to feel, to be
mhm,
vulnerable,
mhm,
to recognize that they don't have to carry the sword and wear the costume that society has descripted that men should be. It is
mhm.
breaking down walls and barriers for men to feel.
Oh,
That is
thank
one of
you.
your greatest gifts. And there are very few people in the world that are doing this. Very few,
Mm,
very few. And so the moment I meet a man who's doing it, I can instantly feel it
mhm,
and intuitively am grateful for their service and their courage
mhm.
to step out of the box and hold space for men to heal and men to feel and yeah, step into that other world of vulnerability.
Thank you for that. I receive that with, enormous, reverence and appreciation, and it also what's cool about this is that when we're in Hogwarts, which you and I kinda live in Hogwarts, like a lot of people don't live there, and so we never get to, like, have others love on us and support our gifts because I've most people I know learned of their gifts in relationship to other people, and they
Mm,
had it reflected to them. There are a
mm,
few folks who are like they just knew, they just had their awareness. However, there's this kind of relational dynamic where we feel ourselves reflected, and somebody says, "Oh no, this is your gift," and then you can go, "Oh my god!" Like I love it in therapy when somebody says something, and I will go, not everybody does that, right? Like not everybody dreams like you dream, or
mm,
not everybody stories like you do, or not everybody feels that little tingling at the bottom of their calf muscles whenever this, that, or the other's going on. Like, and they go, "Really? I thought everybody just did that." Like, no, man, no, you got something here. So it's nice to be in Hogwarts with you and kind of be in that space of reflection.
Well, I should ask you though, I shouldn't assume. I
Mhm.
apologize if I assumed. What would you feel is your gift or, as mutants?
I think that I can move past defense mechanisms really quickly. And so I think I've always accepted a really wide range of people And
Mm,
I like when I was a young person, I always wanted to be friends with everybody. And so I didn't think in these kind of categories of like, oh, I listen to this music, so I hang out with those people. I think I had a wide net. And so I think as a therapist, I can build a relationship quickly. So it certainly fits, around what I do with men and that I have because of that also I think I have sensitivity and intuition and a kind of
mhm,
softer relational side, and I can also speak the language of masculinity from a very, like, total masculine side, and so I'm
mhm.
kind of a Trojan horse, you know?
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. What
makes
about you?
sense.
What are yours?
Mm,
I know what I think.
do share. Why don't you share?
So I think you did it. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you do is you have a kind of penetrating intuitive capacity to point out what's happening in somebody's life and move past some of the narrative so that you're
Mm,
evoking something that probably folks don't know they're aware of or that they possess. And so I think
mm,
even just the way you did that, that kind of excitable, oh, I saw that, like I think that I project onto the people that you work with, whether it's in psychotherapy or elsewhere, that they benefit a lot from
mm,
your wisdom of intuition, and you're using your own intuition to help people envision the parts of themselves that they can't see.
mm. Thank you. That was so
Mhm.
well said. I gotta write that down
Just press rewind, I go
when I'm
back to
feeling
it.
really bad about myself. Yes, I would say that is a piece when
Mhm,
that I trust. I'm learning to trust in that inner knowing
mhm,
of what are people's gifts and clearing the path so they could see their own potential
mhm, mhm,
and clearing away the things that aren't serving them anymore, helping them being, we call it Kon Kamenyar. I walk with you on this journey,
mhm,
on this path, in order to have your life not be perfect, not be
mhm,
without flaws, not be without hurt or bumps in the road, because that's just not going to happen, right? It's our failures that are can be our greatest gifts. And but yet at the same time when they do hit that bump, knowing that, hopefully being with them to support them through that time and pointing out that this isn't all it is. There's
mhm.
so much more to this than what you're experiencing right now. Yeah. I would also say, let me just kind of piggyback on intuition. I've done my best to follow it. It's just
Yeah,
so loud that I can't deny it.
and where does it
And
happen for you?
where does it happen?
Yeah.
I'm auditory. I hear it. I hear it and then I see it.
Uh-huh,
So if I'm working with them and doing intuitive session, because sometimes I do intuitive sessions with people, I have to close my eyes and I can't filter. And if people come through who have passed, yeah, I see them. I see the people. I see the image, and then But if it's in my own life, it's usually auditory. First, it
mhm.
comes in as a voice, and then I see like it's like a movie. It's like duk, 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 and you see the whole thing. It like plays itself out, and then I kind of do some inquiry around it. And I'm big on if it's about someone else. If I hear it 3 times, I'll reach out to them. I don't reach out the first time. If I
Mm.
hear something about someone else, but if I hear it again or I see it, I find a sign or synchronicity or symbol, and then I hear it again, then I'll say, "Hey, just checking in on you," or "Hey, are you open to hearing something that
So
came through me?" or something like that,
I wanted to this is important. I want to, sorry to jump in so quickly, but I was so excited. I like, so people understand the money question. Like I live my life by asking questions about how I make money. Like there are plenty of folks out there that are like, you're orienting your life based upon money. And what I love about what you're saying is you're talking about orienting your life based upon your intuitions that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, then you get better and better and better and better at tuning
Yeah.
into that, and
Yep.
so I just say whatever comes up for you around that, because I think that's such an important truth, is that our capacities are co-opted by, these values in our culture that our culture tells us are valuable, so we never get sensitized to directing our lives in ways that are more connected with an interior truth, as opposed to an exterior truth that certainly wins the day oftentimes.
I'm gonna give such a practical example,
I love it.
but it just happened, so it's
Nice.
crazy. So I'm involved in this amazing community called Sangha. Have I talked to you about Sangha?
Yeah,
I
you
keep thinking
did.
you should have when I used to,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a kind of a community around like-minded people to raise consciousness. We
Yeah.
wanna raise consciousness, right? So there's some in Boulder and San Francisco and New York, and anyway, these amazing people, and so we had the Sangha gathering in Topanga Canyon, I don't know, a month ago or so, 6 weeks ago, and it was unbelievable because it's, like, the most beautiful people that are involved,
Awesome.
and it was amazing, weekend with, like, holotropic breath workers and meditation and really cool conversations, and anyway, really great people. It's a beautiful bridge too, because they kinda make it like the consciousness of YPO, that business
Yeah.
group,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so because I'm always think of myself as a bridge between the spiritual and the scientific, between the practical and the, philosophical, I'm kind of this
Mhm.
bridge. So anyway, so at this retreat center, they had the most comfortable couch, like the most comfortable couch. And I kept thinking to myself, my couch is not comfortable. I bought my couch at home on an emotional purchase. It reminded me of my mom. And I spent more than I would have spent, because I'm kind of frugal. I like it was a teacher before and I still have this like teacher mentality, So I want to talk to you more about money too. What you said was really interesting. Anyway,
Mhm.
but I kept hearing you need to buy a new couch. You need to buy a new couch. And I researched it and then I talked to my husband and he was like, "Well, Molly, this is the best time and whatever." And then we had a meeting with some people about our 2026 finances yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna write you this check, for a tax thing. It's the exact same cost as the couch." So guess what I did this morning? I
Yay.
ordered that fucking couch.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of took the path. I didn't let it go. I kept listening to my intuition, but yet I practically thought about it. I didn't do an impulse buy.
Mhm.
So that's an example of kind of how my intuition plays out in my life. I mean, now couch is kind of a bigger purchase, but I could make it on, do I go left or do I go right? How do
Yes.
I orientate my day when I'm doing my to-do list? I tap into my intuition. I
Yeah.
order priority through my intuition.
Like that. That's
Hmm.
that's a you're setting up a different system of orientation. You used the word orient. I love that. Like, and so to the money thing, it's that, how often do we orient our lives based upon time and money?
Hmm.
It's all seen through the lens of Chronos, this
Hmm.
like
Kairos and Chronos, yeah.
yeah, yeah, this created quantitative
Mhm,
orientation that helps us know where we are
mhm,
in time and space. And when it's money, we know very clearly, I'm good, I'm not. Like that's then, but that becomes our. I always love this. We use the same language for economics that we do for psychology. So my worthiness, what's it worth? What's its value?
mhm,
There's that kind of sense of worthiness around, am I okay? Well, asking your bank account if you're okay is what most of us do, as
mhm,
opposed to asking our intuition or kind of deeper elements of our psyche. So I think this is one of the reasons why we're so anxious, is because the stories that we tap into to orient us have more to do with these external structures than they do with our own interior
mhm.
sense of ourselves in the world.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm.
Do you work with that with your clients, or do you work with that more yourself? Is that kinda something you've been working with? Is that how you came
Yeah, I
into
mean,
this questioning, or
yeah, like, yeah, I work with that. I certainly wanna stare my money complex squarely in the face, and, I was an artist, psychotherapist, healer, so I my alms bowl is, like, the first thing that you see, I'm like, and so kinda working with I come at money from the different relationship, not from the I built my life around getting it. In fact, it's probably the opposite. I prioritized healing and other people around that kind of core
Mhm,
necessity. I mean,
mhm,
money needs to be in the pantheon of the gods. It's just typically the one god in our monotheistic tradition, as opposed to one of many. So that's been part of my work, is to actually make money sacred,
mm.
because I probably rejected it on so many levels for a while. I mean, I know I did for a while.
That's really good to hear, actually. I appreciate that. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. Make money sacred. It's an
Well,
energy.
there was, I told this story once earlier today. I was walking into like a nail salon years ago. This is years ago that I was very Buddhist at the time, and there was a
Sounds like
Vietnamese
a
nail
comedy
salon.
routine. I was
Yeah, oh
walking
yeah,
into
hey,
a
walking
nails.
in a nail salon. I was ready for a pedicure, and I saw this little altar that they had at the entryway, and it had all the stuff, the little statues of Buddha and the fruit and the water and the incense and everything. And there was money
Oh, yeah.
in there, and I was pissed. I was like, "Fuck these people! Like, this is you're shitting in the temple. How dare you tarnish the temple with this like profane symbol?" And I mean, little did I know how wrong I was. Like how
Mm,
short sighted that was. And so I think a lot of my own personal work, and one of the kind of major complexes that I wrestle with is I'm such a ideas and imagination and psyche and quantum and kind of the immeasurable and the unseen world. I forgot that matter is sacred.
mm,
Material is sacred, and so I think so much of my current existence is the reparative work of bridging together
mhm,
the two so they become the one again. And I didn't reject one into the shadow. And so that matter is sacred, and money
mhm,
is a current. It's a currency that is rather arbitrary, and we end up projecting onto it. And so I've been asked twice today by dear friends, what I feel when they say money, money, money,
mm,
what happens in your body. And there you got it. There you see some of your resistances and noticing what just stirs in you. And so you were saying earlier, frugal, and it's like I might have this kind of response. And I need to maintain this, or I don't give a shit about that thing. Like I don't need to. I'm playing the hard to get, like. And so this all teaches us this dynamic that we have onto a very powerful deity figure, at least lesser
mm,
deity in the pantheon of humanity. Sex and money deserve to be up there, and those are important
mhm.
elements. Talk to any therapists, and we know.
Well, 2 things come through when you were saying that is one is I need to out myself, and that would be around that I needed to say I was frugal, that I'm used to living on a teacher's salary because I didn't want your listeners to think I was this rich white woman, right? And privileged. I
Yes.
already mentioned I went to Europe and I'm buying a new couch. So there was this part of me that felt like I needed a disclaimer.
Oh, that's huge.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I out myself there that I could have
Truth
just told the
telling.
story and let it
Yeah.
be what it is, and I
Right
I
on.
didn't, and that's old, old stuff,
There you go.
right?
Yes.
Raised from my family and, all that where I was raised with money and all how money was in my family,
What an honor for you to call it out. Like that's big. You
That was the
model you
first
model
thing.
really healthy behavior there. True.
Yeah, I mean, when you were saying it, I was like, "Oh, shit, I
Ooh,
just did
yeah.
that, I just
Oh
saw
shit.
myself do it." Because I was afraid the listeners would think this or that about
Oh
me,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right
There
there
you
we go,
go.
kind of like to piggyback where we started is where I'm still at 54, sometimes I'm more scared, there's the
Yes.
riskiness of identity, and then the second thing is when you were talking, I just kept thinking, "And there's not even money anymore." We got rid of the
Yeah.
penny.
Yeah.
Pretty soon coins will be and they'll be
Abstractions.
gone.
Right.
There's actually no even physical visual
Mhm.
image. Now
Mhm.
we really know it's an energy, a
Yeah.
passing of things. And how do we sit in that when people say money, money,
Mhm.
money? It's like
That's it.
saying God, 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 because we can't see God. I mean, we
That's
still
it.
can see our money, but it's this elusive thing. And you probably learned this in graduate school, like I did. The two biggest things people don't want to talk about are sex and money.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't go to my grad school wasn't quite as depth oriented as yours was. Yeah. I trained
Mm.
rats, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's
We
right.
did
Yeah.
hardcore assessment. Yeah, this was like a clinical psych. Yeah. Well, hey, I want to start closing us out now, but I really mean that, Molly. I mean that your capacity to love people as you call them out is also your capacity to love on yourself as you call yourself out. And you model health, right? Of course, we're all going to peacock and we're going to try to like yes, we all do that shit, but can we call it out and be honest about what stirs? And there are so many times when my answer has been no. I just like, I'm navigating the social space and doing my thing and projecting out there, and how much I really want to walk in integrity to be able to call myself out anytime I trespass
Mm,
on myself or somebody else. So you model really healthy behavior there. Thank you for
mm.
that.
Thank you. It's a work in progress. I'm a work in
Oof,
progress.
amen to that. Can't yeah, I mean, that God Almighty, that's the truth, right? Like, that
Uh,
is the truth, and I don't know anybody who's not. And we are in a culture of people who are putting themselves out there in the world as if there is perfection.
I know.
Right,
I know. And that's why I think why you and I both struggle with social media because
right.
it I look at it and I post about my podcast and I do the whole thing too, but I'm horrible at it. And everyone when looks at
Yeah,
my page will be like, "Oh yeah, she needs a lot of support." But it's because there's a part of me that knows it's an illusion.
mhm,
And yeah, so it's and but I'm a work in progress, right? Because there's times I'll
mhm,
be the illusion and there's times I want to be perfect. There's times my identity is doesn't want to be flawed and
yeah,
I think, talking about intuition, when you do start listening to your intuition more, and when you do start using it as a compass and a guiding force as part of your decision making and your schedule of the day and your how you want to live your life, actually in a practical
right.
way, like one of your tips and tools, learn that it won't let you be anything but authentic. It helps you be more
Mm,
authentic.
mhm,
It helps you be more of a truth teller. It helps you with connection. It helps you, it supports you, it loves you through wanting you. It has no agenda except to have you follow your own voice, your own path, and your own way of living.
beautiful. Thank you. This has been I'll continue to walk with this conversation after we close it out. Is there anything else that like, any place you wanna direct folks? Anything else that needs to be said in our conversation?
And yeah, they can go to my website. They can look at what I do. If anyone needs support, they can reach out to me. I'm very accessible. I've
Yeah.
in that way, yeah, the podcast, a lot of great stories and a place to not feel alone. Crack you open. Yeah, I would just say anyone listening today to tell them they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job. They're doing the best they can do. And I honor that in them. And to recognize that life is beautiful, life is vibrant, life is alive, and life can be challenging, right? And give us a
Mhm.
lot of it's our greatest teacher. And so to give
Yes.
yourself a break and knowing that you're doing a great job and, be proud of yourself for waking up and doing what you do every day.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, look below, anybody, all the links. I'll put all your stuff at the bottom, and thank you for being my teacher today.
Thank you, John. What a gift to be
Appreciate
with
it.
you. Thank you.
You too.